portray as representing abortion issues, marriage issues, and it's really tough here in Washington to offset that. And it does take a fighting spirit, I must tell you, to get up there and really lay opposition to the vernacular that they tend to use. So we put together this morning a panel, and I'm killing some time because I think Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn has arrived. And she, frankly, is from Tennessee. I think Jill said Indiana, but she's from Tennessee. And Marsha, was before arriving in Washington 3 years ago, Representative Blackburn was the first woman elected to the Tennessee Senate. Upon arrival in Washington, she became the first woman elected to the United States Congress from Tennessee. To feminists, she should have been, that should have been considered breaking the glass ceiling, or marble if you're closing. But instead, the feminists frowned. They were not happy because, of course, she's a fighter. She's a fighter for life, and she's a fighter for marriage, and she's a fighter for national security and all the things we are concerned about. So she's even a fighter on the most misunderstood issue, which I'm going to ask she and Congressman Schmidt about his stem cell issue. No one really understands that there's a very easy answer on this issue, which is adult stem cells. So I'm going to take a chance, and I do believe that Representative Blackburn is here, and if she can join me on the stage, Marsha Blackburn. And I find it incredible that money gets poured into the campaign. We want so many women like you in Congress, but there are these groups like Emily's List, and the Hollywood money gets poured into there. Barbara Streisand and Whoopi Goldberg and people like that are pouring money into those organizations, which then come into the districts and really make it very hard for anybody, frankly, who's pro-life, man or woman. But I think in the case of conservative women, it's a little harder, I think.
Yes.
You might want to speak to that.
I will speak to that, and indeed it is. I think we've had 3 or 4 different surveys that show a conservative woman, while she may be the most preferred candidate, the most trusted candidate on the ballot, woman will raise only $1 for every $3 that a male counterpart will raise. So that does make it more difficult for conservative women when it comes to funding those races and being competitive on a money basis. And many times we make up for it by working a little bit harder. And I think there are probably many women in the room today who are baby boomers like me, who have known that you have to work a little harder, work a little longer, put forth a little bit more effort, and maybe follow a non-traditional route in order to be able to move to a leadership position. So, I many times quote the Ginger Rogers Fred Astaire example. It was Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, as most people did the fancy duo. However, Ginger Rogers took every step he took, but she took it in high heels together. And so she knows truly how important it is to be able to keep up. And sometimes it's more difficult if you don't want the finished product to have what is worth it. And to be able to stand before you and to say, we are making this effort to protect our freedom, to make certain that our nation stays focused on the value of freedom for future generations, to protect life, and to be certain that our children and our grandchildren have an America that we grow up in. It is safe, it is free, it is the home of big dreams and opportunity, and it is worth the sacrifices that we have to make. And we will continue to work, even if we raise that $1 for every $3 that a guy raises, or a conservative woman raises less than a liberal woman, or a conservative woman has fewer groups to be in there helping them. The fight is worth it, and the outcome is what we're all about.
What has confounded me in all the time that I've been pro-lifer working in Washington, D.C. is why, and I'd like your think of this, why is it that the liberal faction, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, Barbara Boxer, and others, can't come together even on curriculum education? When your child is going to have an abortion and she's taken by another family, perhaps over state lines, you can't get an aspirin in the clinic. But now, even in the state of Michigan, they're providing with federal tax cuts. They're providing contraception in middle school. So, what is this thought process that you've come to, that you work directly with some of these liberal women in Congress, that takes them away from credit and wanting?
Yeah, and that is so interesting, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because you and I know that the people that should have the greatest impact on that child's life is their mom and dad. And everything. And that, as I said earlier, faith, family, freedom, hope, and opportunity. When you talk about an underpinning that you're going to make decisions from, that's a great underpinning to have, and a great focus to have. I find it so interesting that sometimes people want to, maybe it is that they fear having the responsibility of raising that child. Maybe it is that fear what will happen if they have to change and impart those values. But I will tell you quite frankly, I'm 27 years old, 30, I did not want it to take a village to raise those children.
Congressman, we're talking now as women, just as women.
Just as girls, right?
But
I see some guys in the
yeah,
audience.
there are. They have to come with us for a little while here. But what we're talking about the commodification of women. Do they understand when they're talking about agreeing on extent cell research that it requires power aids? I mean, listen, you know, these women, do they understand? I mean, they're supposed to stand for women, and yet they need our aids, actually, for women. And I don't understand why that's not a liberal women's issue. But I didn't get a chance to completely introduce you, but if you go ahead on that point, I'll fit it in as we go.
Well, first off, on the parental notification, what I'm hearing on the airways here in D.C. are some school systems that actually want to give 11-year-old children contraceptives with or without parental notification. Ladies and gentlemen, that's absolutely wrong. To know that we were raising our children, what was going on with our child's life. And you have that same right because it's your responsibility also for the outcome of that child. And it's your responsibility. You should know what's happening. To give those kids, those young women, to get that drug to protect them we don't know what effects that drug's going to have on children in their future. But more importantly, what kind of a message does it send to 11-year-old girls? Think about the message that it sends. We don't trust you, so therefore we're going to protect you. Again, it's really eroding women's rights, mothers' rights, parents' rights. And I know that Marsha and I stand against the erosion of our rights.
Well, one other point, I'll ask Marsha to comment on this. Evidently, this is the state of Maine where this controversy is going on, and there are federal tax dollars involved, so you're going to pay for this too. But when that kicks in, it means also that the health privacy clause kick in, which means when a child, they are children, we're talking about 11 years old, when they go to get the contraception, your parental rights are gone because they cannot, then the school nurse cannot report that the child's in there to even imagine, although every year there's something that the other women in the house, such as Nancy Pelosi and others, seem to embrace.
Well, and the healthcare privacy rights is something that has come to the forefront with the Virginia Tech shootings. And I saw that time and again being mentioned when you have psychologists that would say, well, we didn't mention it because of the privacy and the notification issues that are there. Parents need to know about their children, and they need to be able to help them make those decisions. And that is one of the reasons that we continue to see this issue come up. It is not only there with the issues for school health, for the contraceptives, for the psychological screenings, but we are seeing this throughout the year, not only with children, but also the other end, as you look at parents who are elderly and who are aging, and children who are becoming their caregivers. And as you look at those life issues on both ends of the spectrum, I serve on the health subcommittee at Energy and Commerce. That is one of my committee assignments. And these are issues Blackburn. I invite all of you to keep up with us on these issues, and Jean does such great work on these issues in Congress. And if she's going to want to give her website so
that you all can stay in touch with her.
It's basically the same, except they had Schmidt instead of Blackburn, and we got the same website.
Now, can you spell that?
S-P-H. It's the good German spelling. S-P-H-M-I-T-T.
Well, Congresswoman, you've introduced measures to withdraw federal funding to organizations like Planned Parenthood if they don't report child sexual abuse. I think you've also sponsored the RU-486 Suspension and Review Act. And you've also sponsored appropriations bills that would aid nonprofit groups to get ultrasound equipment to provide examinations to women who need them.
Regarding the notification, we have two cases in the city that I represent, Cincinnati, Ohio, where Planned Parenthood knowingly allowed a young lady to have an abortion that was underage and clearly was violated, which is considered statutory rape. In one case, it was the high school coach that took her in to have the abortion, paid for it, and said he was woke, the parental guardian, or the actual guardian, not parental guardian. In another case, it was the father that was sexually abusing the child. Thank goodness for Rachel Hutzel, who is the county prosecutor in Warren County. She is fabulous, as all my county prosecutors are, that I represent. But she went to the mat with the young man, with the young girl who was violated by her father. But the max that man can get in jail is 5 years. And the sad part is Planned Parenthood will not release the information on this, nor will they report when a 15-year-old girl comes in for an abortion. She is pregnant, she is underage, there's something illegal going on here. But they refuse to report, and they use that, well, it's the privacy issue. Ladies and gentlemen, when there is an offense out there, we have not just a moral obligation, but a legal obligation to report those offenses.
Before I turn to Congresswoman Blackburn, I just want to say that because you've been so outspoken on these issues, you get the dubious distinction of having Emily's List and NARAL spend close to $250,000 for the exact purpose of defeating you in this past election. And I tell you, that is courage. And I know I can only imagine what it's like trying to get past those dollars and get your message out when Hollywood stays against you and these groups who just raise incredible amounts of money.
You know, we're not sent here to do the easy job. We're sent here to do the right job. And it is my responsibility to make sure that all life is protected, no matter where it is in the family. All life is not just protected, but respected. This is what we are asked to do, not just by our Lord and Savior, but we're also asked by our Constitution to do the same thing. I know I'm their #1 target, and I know I have a big mark on my back. But all I can ask you to do is to pray that I will continue to have courage to do what is right for this nation, for our children, for our families, and for our elders.
Amazed at the fact that these pregnancies that in the United States are so probably the best organizations for women in my view. Many of you are here because people who give to women, they take their time, and yet the liberals would like to shut them down. And they tried every illegal and legal avenue to shut them down when they provide nothing but full service for women in trouble with unwanted pregnancy. I wondered if you could comment on the pregnancy care centers, and in fact, so little recognition, I think, frankly, from the Republicans as well. I would like to have seen, frankly, the president go into a few of these centers and get some good publicity for the good work they do. I can see that happen. It's something that I was disappointed in.
I'm really glad to do so because all of us, I know Jean has centers in her district, and those of us that are pro-life women in Congress, we meet regularly and we talk, and we all have good centers in our district. And Jean and I both served. She was at the state legislature in Ohio. I was with the state senate in Tennessee before coming to Congress, and we had the opportunity to work with these centers on that state legislative basis. But to have them stand in the gap, to stand in there and to give these young women, many times don't know who to turn to, the opportunity to have someone to come mentor them, stand with them, and walk with them through this process is wonderful. So to those of you who are from the centers who are here, yes indeed, we do thank you. Please know that we realize the importance of your being able to continue doing the work that you do. Now, that is I mentioned the legal challenges that many of these centers have set. That is why federal judges, good, constitutional, loving federal judges are so very important. It's one of the reasons we're going to see such importance placed on our next presidential election, because who is sitting on the bench really matters.
Your comment about abstinence education. Again, how can these schools be against abstinence education? It absolutely boggles my mind when women carry a disproportionate burden as a result, when childbirth, some of the diseases that are carried. Abstinence education seems to me to be in the forefront of anything that they're doing at the state levels, and yet we can't come to agreement with the liberals in Congress on that as well. Marsha, would you like to give a shot at that first?
Oh, I'll be happy to. Abstinence education comes to the state senate convention, state levels, and some of the curriculums.
I served 4 years in the state legislature, and in my first term I sat on finance in both cases, and an individual came before us and asked if we would help pay for abstinence education in the public curriculum, and I thought this was a slam dunk, how wrong I was. But we did get it passed in my second term. And really, it makes sense for the health and welfare of the child. What happens to young women is when they are very sexually active and active with more than one partner, they compromise their future health. And we know this. They get cervical cancer or cervical cancer simply because they're sexually active. Well, there's a way to stop that. Don't be sexually active. It's all that. Hollywood is upside down this message. They want us to believe that if we teach abstinence education, it is irresponsible. Ladies and gentlemen, it is irresponsible not to teach abstinence education. The folks on the left of this issue talk about a women's choice. Well, this is about choice. Teaching values, the right kind of values, and just say no. We're all about saying no to drugs. What about saying no to early sexual activity? I think that's another
The liberal answers are simple. In other words, they want to inoculate children early with the thought that there is no hope that they will be sexually active. And again, it's constantly amazing to see the answers that they come up with. And then, we...
One more point there. I want to go back to something you brought up with you that I think I would encourage you as you are working with town councils and with your state legislature on abstinence education. Go back to that little phrase, long-term health care risk. Long-term health care risk. And as you talk to your state legislators about ways to study this issue, I think that that is a great place to try in. What are the long-term health care risks? What's the evaluating data? What are the studies? What can we bring forward over a period of time to show the increased health care risk to a young woman from early sexual activity?
We're up against a lot of odds, even to those of us who go up and lobby on the Hill on these issues. For instance, on stem cells. With all respect to the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation, they really, the biotech industry is behind them that want federal dollars because there's no successes on this side of the United States. And therefore, they might keep going to try to find us because they're going to have federal dollars. And it's tough to get up there and lobby that they're bringing in very, very heartfelt cases that people need to compete with and all. And all we can do is stand there and say, oh, we can. We actually have brought people as well who are treated at least by adult stem cell research. And I'd like to hear your experience with these kinds of visits and your experience on this issue.
When I met with a group of folks that want a helping hand, I agree, they need that helping hand. And I find it amazing that we don't look to the fact that the Lord has never asked us to compromise His values. And there are answers out there that will not compromise what He expects us to be. And one of those is cord blood. The research for cord blood, that's the umbilical cord. How many babies are born every single day? And we throw away a life-saving byproduct of their birth. It's the spare part I believe the Lord has given us to unlock that door to responsible stem cell research in this country. Amazing. And there's so much better in many ways the attributes for blood than embryonic. And I'm not a biologist, and I can't speak to the technical terms. But the life-saving qualities of that little umbilical cord for leukemia, for Parkinson's disease, for juvenile diabetes are tremendous. And we really need to focus our attention on responsible stem cell research. Get rid of the politics. Let's look for ways that work so that we can cure folks
media who, we were constantly, we follow this very closely at FRC. Dr. David Prentice is a world-renowned authority on the issue, and we get the stories every day in our emails. And the way the media reports them is advance in stem cells, heart cures, backbone cure, all these treatments. But they never say it's adult stem cells, and so they continue to make the case that really it's these embryos we need to keep doing this. They don't need the embryos; it's adult stem cells that they're working with in those successes, and that's where the NIH money and all of the money is in the world.
You're exactly right. As I mentioned earlier, on the Health Subcommittee and Energy and Commerce, and dealing with these issues is an everyday process with us. When I was in the state of Tennessee, I started 5 task force in the state of Tennessee because of the promise that the biosciences hold for improving quality of life. Now, when it comes to stem cells, what we do is precisely right. Adult stem cells and cord blood hold tremendous promise. What we need to realize is that we do have the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, the Constitution. They put billions of dollars into research every year, whether it is for Alzheimer's or for Parkinson's or for cystic fibrosis. There's millions of dollars that are going into research. Now, not all of that research is done here in Washington, D.C. Much of it is done in university research centers all across the nation. These are located in your communities, and you have researchers that are doing there. And again, taking it back to the local level and to the state level, each and every one of you have the opportunity with your state and local electeds to say, and with your university research centers, to go to them and say, let me ask you, what are you doing with cord blood research? How are you working to find these grants, to find opportunities to interject some of this research? It should not be a partisan issue. Improving the quality of life should not be a partisan issue. And just as many times the liberal believe that the breakthroughs in this research are only coming from stem cells. That is not true. We've had tremendous strides. If you will go in and Google cord blood research, you will be surprised some of the studies and some of the breakthroughs that are there. I encourage you to do this and to stand strong on the issue.
One perhaps final subject here is should a certain woman become president, the Freedom of Choice Act will come to the desk. And
I really want to speak more generally to November's election and how important it is that we stand behind whatever candidate comes out that will be her rival and stand behind that person, whether we agree with all of their opinions and values or not. Because if we don't, we will have that woman in power. We should always get the candidate that we really believe in 100%. Sometimes we have to look at the better prize that's out there. And if it means having a candidate that we are a little bit uncomfortable with, but is less likely to compromise with our people, less likely to take away parental rights with children, less likely to take away the rights, and one thing we haven't even mentioned, touched on briefly, was the right of you and I when we take care of our elder parents, and what kind of rights do we have when they go to the hospital. All those kind of things will be compromised. We will end up with a Supreme Court that will be far more liberal than I think we've ever faced in the past. So, this presidential debate is critically important. choice that will be on the other side.
Say or two before we leave the stage.
As I said when I started, I am absolutely thrilled that you all are here because we need you in Washington. And you know what? Our nation needs us. We are a center-right country. We all know that. And what a great opportunity for each and every one of us to be out there in our communities, reminding people this nation is built on a great legacy. It is a legacy of service, of sacrifice, of men and women who care enough to lay their life on the line for what this nation stands for. And as I said in the beginning, you can put that underpinning into faith, family, freedom, hope, and opportunity. We know that our Republican nominee for president is going to carry that banner. We know that we are going to have U.S. Senate and congressional candidates that are going to carry that banner. We know we're going to see the same thing at our state and our local races. I think we all just have to be bold, we have to be cheerful, we have to cheer up, and we have to prepare to win.
Wonderful members of Congress for coming and for doing the work that they do. And thank all of you sincerely. I want to echo what Marsha Blackburn said.